This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
We have the latest from Afghanistan, where the Taliban has named a new caretaker government. Guinea coup leader releases political prisoners as Ecowas mulls sanctions. And Zimbabwe and Nigeria eye drastic measures to compel their citizens to be vaccinated against COVID-19. Hello and welcome to Africa Live. As always, great to have you with us. I'm Richard Nta, live in Nairobi. And for those of you joining us from across the continent and around the globe, we thank you for joining us. Let's take a look at other stories making headlines this hour. In business, Egypt's economy defies odds to grow by 7.7% in the fourth quarter of the 2020-2021 fiscal year. And in sports, we have the latest results from the qualifying rounds of the 2022 FIFA World Cup in Qatar. Once again, welcome to Africa Live. Great to have you along with me for this hour. Let's begin in Afghanistan. The Taliban have announced the formation of a caretaker government. Mullah Hassan Akhund is the acting prime minister. He was an aide to late Taliban founder Mohammed Omar. For more, we are joined by Zamaria Abbasin, who is live in Kabul. Zamaria, welcome to Africa Live. Good to see you. Thank you for joining us. How are people reacting to the new appointments, Zamaria?
Hello, Richard. Well, it seems like the Taliban were already confronting waves of protests in the country. Just by today, there were 3 different places where people were protesting against Taliban, and they were demanding the inclusivity of the government, which the Taliban say it will be a short-term government and they will seek the inclusive government in the future when things are finalized. Yet Taliban believe that it is not a good situation to protest, as Zabihullah Mujahid have been continuously saying. But at the same time, the Taliban seems to be facing a new generation, a different country that they have been ruling 20 years ago. There are people everywhere and the youth that demanding either the freedom of speech, freedom of choice, and every kind of freedom that they already gained since last 20 years, while on the other hand, there are ethnic groups, mostly women and girls, that are protesting the Taliban. On the other hand, there are also some regions supporting the Taliban government in rural areas, and they say the country is far much better in regard to the security situation. There has been no casualty reports. The suicide attacks, car bombs, magnetic bombs, and a lot of others, those tactics which were used even by the Taliban themselves in the ISKPN country. Now there is no report of such things because the Taliban is ruling themselves the country. And many people in Afghanistan believe that they will make the Taliban listen to them. Whether the Taliban want them, but they say the Taliban will have to accept their demands, which is Islamic and also according with the values of Afghanistan. Yet we have to see the Taliban, who were just in military era and offensives, and now facing protests which are peaceful, but this is a new thing for the Taliban to be experienced. Richard.
Indeed, Zamaria, let's circle back and talk more about those protests. You made mention of the youth demanding freedom of speech. Let's zero in on the women. The women are also demanding their rights. Tell us how the Taliban is handling that particular issue.
Well, there are 2 aspects, Richard, of those protests held in the south of the country and also in the east and west of the country. The western part is the people of Hazara and the ethnically group that have no representative in Taliban government, and they say they have to have their representative in the government. That's why they are protesting, while also chanting the rights of the women in regard to education and work and job and everything that they have been doing since last 20 years. The Taliban haven't given the really exact answer, but they're again emphasizing on to avoid protesting because there is no specific system yet, and they need trained forces to cooperate and also confront the protests and rallies in the country. So the Taliban are also saying that those who want to protest in the country, they have to submit their applications for the protest, and they should go through the legal ways. But there is now question, if the Taliban say legal ways, which ways? The Constitution of Afghanistan is already now postponed. There is a new system, a wholly new system under the Taliban, a cabinet of 33 people who are, all of them are just Taliban member, and there are much more to come in the country. Many believe that the protests waves will increase as every day pass, and that would be a challenging spot for the Taliban, and they have to hear the voices from all around the country. Yet the Taliban say they are getting prepared to finally form system where the protesters could easily and freely do their protest peacefully.
All right, Zamaralai, it's very clear the Taliban have to deal with a very different Afghanistan. Zamaralai, thank you for that update. Earlier, we talked to two analysts on Afghanistan's new caretaker government. Wan Jin is an associate professor at China's Northwest University specializing in Middle Eastern studies, and Joseph Gregory Mahoney is a professor of politics at East China Normal University. Let's take a listen.
I think the priority for Afghan Taliban's new government will be try to stabilize the internal affairs, because if you look at the list, a lot of the posts, especially the very key posts, for example, the defense, interior, and also as some kind of security departments that are in charge of the Haqqani network. We have to know that the Kabul right now is actually controlled by the forces belong to the Haqqani network, although they all belong to the Afghan Taliban network, but actually they have still their own branches inside the Afghan Taliban. So I think the priority right now for the Afghan Taliban-led new government, if you look at the list, it means that they will, the priority, first of all, to stabilize internal affairs, to go back to the stability and order, and then maybe other things, for example, economic and social and even refugee issues will become the secondary than the political one. So I think the first of all, political order will be the priority for the new government in the future.
Multiple government officials of this caretaker government actually are on the UN sanctions or wanted by the FBI. Some even were in Guantanamo Bay with the Interior Minister especially blacklisted by the UN for his ties to Al-Qaeda. How would countries looking to work with the Taliban possibly?
It will definitely make it harder for some countries to recognize and work with this new government. That said, it also sends, I think, a clear signal to the United States and the United Kingdom that their days of determining who speaks for and rules Afghanistan are finished. It's not clear that this message was intentional. It might simply reflect the realities of local politics. The most urgent question is whether this will further undermine emergency aid and support from the international community, given the numerous crises that Afghanis face presently.
U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken is wrapping up a visit to Doha, where he met Qatari officials for talks on Afghanistan. Qatar's foreign minister says the country hopes Kabul's airport could quickly resume for passengers, but so far there is no agreement on how it will be run. And 4 more U.S. citizens have been evacuated from Afghanistan by land. Caroline Malone has more from Washington, D.C.
We know they safely departed Afghanistan, and we know that they actually took a land route out of the country, and that was facilitated by the US State Department. But it is unclear which border they crossed and actually where they are now. The US State Department's actually kept that quiet for the time being, potentially because this is really a new option for getting Americans out of Afghanistan, that they don't want to be threatened. I mean, since US troops withdrew and the Kabul airport is actually closed, that isn't an option at the time, for the time being. We know that news about the group came out from the US Secretary of State, Antony Blinken. He's been meeting with Qatari leaders and people that are coordinating evacuations and processing of people who are actually in Qatar, thousands there at the moment. He has confirmed that the US is in contact with the Taliban about getting other people out of Afghanistan. In the meantime, Qatari officials have expressed an interest in actually reopening the Kabul airport to international flights, which could potentially help get more people out in the future, but the security is still a concern in the capital. From Blinken's perspective, he said that around 100 Americans are still in Afghanistan and do want to still leave.
Let's now head to Guinea, where opposition leader Celo Delaine Diallo said he is ready to participate in the country's political transition. Diallo, who is deposed President Alpha Conde's long-term rival, said there's a need to organize democratic elections. The 69-year-old Diallo was defeated by Conde in the 2020 elections that were preceded by violence. Conde was ousted in a military coup on Sunday. Coup leaders have pledged to set up a transition government preceded by consultations.
Those who come into power want to take on a lot of missions, grand missions. But for me, the principal mission is to get the country out of this exceptional period. If our technical and financial partners have naturally condemned the coup, then the first mission for me is to help the country get out of this exceptional period by organizing free and fair elections so that we can put institutions back in place, credible and legitimate institutions, because they come from the will of the sovereign people.
Meanwhile, 80 political prisoners, some who were jailed for challenging Alpha Conde's third presidential term, have been released. The prisoners freed on Tuesday included Ismail Conde, a former member of the deposed president's RPG party who rallied against his presidential bid last year. Opponents of the president had been displeased by his decision to run for a third term. They deemed Alpha Conde's candidacy illegitimate after the Constitution was amended, allowing him to run again.
I feel free. I am free. Thank you to the people. Thank you, everyone. This is everything that we could hope for. Thank you very much.
My feelings are those of a lawyer who's seeing people for whom fought for months and months finally getting out of prison and finding their freedom. At this moment, my thoughts go to the detainees who died in prison and did not get the opportunity to be freed. May they rest in peace. We all have to fight as Guineans in order for these situations to stop in this country.
We are now joined by Tejin Bangura, a freelance journalist in Guinea. Tejin, welcome to Africa Live. Tejin, 80 political prisoners have been released. What more can you tell us?
Well, I think this is a great relief for the families of those detainees who have been released by the coup leaders. As you heard from some of those detainees, those former detainees, they are very happy. I just want to remind you that some of them spent more than 10 months in prison since the past presidential election. So now I think it's a great relief for all the people of Guinea, because I would just want to remind you that some of those detainees were relieved, but in exchange of an appeal to Alpha Conde in that time. So it came a time, if you want to go out and meet your family, you should appeal publicly to the president, to Alpha Conde, before you come out. So those who were in there, those refused to appeal publicly to Alpha Conde. So today is a great relief for those those former detainees and their families.
Well, indeed, 10 months is a long time. Tejin, we are also now seeing an opposition leader saying he is willing to participate in the country's political transition. Does this reflect the mood in the country following the coup?
Well, I think this is a big announcement because everyone was expecting the main political party, which is UFDG of Cellou Dalein Diallo, who has now announced that he's willing to accompany the military leaders in the transitional government. And it is not the only announcement. All of the political parties here in Guinea, everybody has now accepted as a state. Everybody, the situation under Alpha Condé was so unstable, was so uncertain that this coup is kind of a hope, just say a sign of victory for those political leaders because it puts everything back to zero. Everyone can go back like when you take the situation in 2010. It was the same situation where all the political parties came together and to form a transitional government. So hearing the main political opposition party saying that they are willing to join to help to be a part of this transitional government is something very huge. Apart from Cellou Dalein Diallo, Sidia Touré, also who is another leader of the opposition party, and most of the leaders of the opposition party are willing to join this government. So I think it's a big relief. It's also a sign of victory, as I said earlier, for Guinea, to see all those political parties coming together to put their hands together and get Guinea out of this situation that we're facing right now. As you know, Guinea is we are expecting sanctions. We are expecting the Ecowas and the African Union to on some restrictions on Guinea on the institutional part. So for now, what is not known is when and how long this transitional government is going to take until the return to a civil administration to the head of the country.
Tejan Bangura, thank you for sharing your perspective. Many thanks. Let's dive a little deeper. Regional body ECOWAS is later on Wednesday slated to hold a meeting on the situation in Guinea. For more on that, we are joined by Phil Ihaza, who is live in Abuja, Nigeria. Phil, welcome to Africa Live. ECOWAS has threatened to impose sanctions on the Guinea coup leaders. What is on the table, Phil Ihaza?
Well, thanks, Richard. What we know is that, of course, the regional body, leaders of the regional body are expected to hold an extraordinary summit later today or at most early on Thursday, on Guinea. We don't know the exact, details of the meeting for now, but we know that indeed they'll definitely be talking about the release of freedom of Alpha Condé from the putschist, especially because he has refused to resign and is still with them, although they say that he's in good state of health and all of that, but he's 83 years old, and of course that's a concern that will be on the table for the regional leaders. Also, we expect to see some sanctions, maybe economic sanctions that would restrict them from trade relations among neighboring countries. But of course, we know those sanctions will not be imposed immediately because they'll first be put out until the soldiers or the people in power heed to their terms. We also know that they are concerned about the developments in Mali, and that's the reason that they are holding this summit to discuss the terms, in Guinea, so that we don't see repeated, situation in Guinea where they may not pay attention to the details or the timeline of activities. What we know currently is that the soldiers or the people who are behind the coup are already drumming support from a larger part of Guinea, releasing the prisoners like we saw in the video. We see celebrations of the citizens, even the opposition parties putting up support. And then I've been speaking to some experts, and they say that maybe the ECOWAS body will need to be more proactive to be involved in some of these issues, especially with leaders in their bloc having controversies while in office, so that it doesn't put them vulnerable to coup attempts and all of that. So we're just monitoring, the meeting that we expect the leaders to hold later on, and of course we'll get more updates related to the Guinea developments. Richard.
All right, Phil Ihaza, let's leave it there for now. Thank you for that update and report. You are watching Africa Live. The news continues. Here's what's ahead. Zimbabwe and Nigeria eye drastic measures to compel their citizens to be vaccinated against COVID-19. And Kenya receives more Moderna vaccines from the United States.
The East China Sea, home of dream seekers, where China's hub for reform and opening up connects with the maritime Silk Road. Whether it's exploring the busiest seaport and trade zone, or witnessing how locals strive for a better life. Join CGTN's adventure, Tides of Change Part 2. A journey enchanted by a dynamic ocean and beyond.
Welcome back to Africa Live. Thanks for staying with us. Let's turn our attention to Zimbabwe, where the country has issued a stern directive to state employees. The government has ordered them to get vaccinated against COVID-19 or resign from their positions. Justice Minister Ziyambi issued the decree during a radio interview on Tuesday. Authorities say that this is to reduce the risk of any of their employees spreading the coronavirus to others. As schools have reopened, the government is encouraging teachers to be vaccinated. The Southern African country has around 300,000 civil servants, and that includes 100,000 teachers. Zimbabwe's Congress of Trade Unions approached the High Court last month to challenge the compulsory inoculation of workers. The country has over 125,000 confirmed coronavirus cases and has recorded around 4,500 deaths from the disease. Meanwhile, in Nigeria, the federal government says it may sanction eligible citizens who refuse COVID-19 vaccinations. At a briefing in Abuja, the executive director of the National Primary Healthcare Development Agency says Faisal Shoaib says government may apply the rule against unvaccinated people as they pose a danger to the lives of others. The states of Edo and Ondo have so far restricted access to public places for unvaccinated residents. Like other African countries, Nigeria has experienced vaccine hesitancy. This has hindered the goal to achieve herd immunity. The West African country is battling a third wave of COVID-19 and received 4 million doses of Moderna vaccines donated by the United States last month. Well, joining me now for more is Farai Mwakatuya in Harare and Deji Badamosi live from Lagos. Gentlemen, welcome to Africa Live. Let's begin with you, Farai. Tell us more about this new development in Zimbabwe and why the government wants to compel civil servants to get the jab.
Well, thank you so much. The Justice Minister and indeed the government, I think, is trying, as they're saying there, to minimize the risk to those who work in the civil service, but also to the public, because the civil servants obviously interface with the public. So they're trying to minimize the risk, also minimize disruptions to service that would happen when people contract COVID-19 and require hospitalization, also to reduce the burden in terms of cost. I think the indication from the minister is also trying to set a tone or to an indication that government is willing to walk the talk, and so other employers can also follow suit. It is obviously a legal minefield because the constitutionality of it is already being challenged in the courts. There is no law that says vaccines are mandatory, but I think what government is trying to do is to encourage and add some urgency to those who are yet to decide, those who are sitting on the fence, to go out and get the jab so that we can get to herd immunity, or herd immunity can be achieved as quickly as possible.
All right, important points. Let's get Deji Badamosi into this conversation. Deji, as we have just heard, the federal government could sanction eligible Nigerians who refuse COVID-19 vaccinations. What's the latest?
Well, Richard, look, the operative word there is could. It's not as if there's any plan in place at the moment. I'm talking about concrete plan now, but the government has made it very clear through the National Primary Healthcare Development Agency that when it gets to the time, if it's necessary, it would be willing to impose sanctions on those who choose not to get vaccinated. But the truth is that at the moment, yes, there's that problem of vaccine hesitancy, no doubt at all. But people are evolving. So at the moment, the challenge the country has is that there isn't enough vaccine to go around. So For instance, less than 1% of the population has been vaccinated, not because people do not want to take the vaccine, but just because the vaccines are not available at the moment. For instance, we're doing another round of the Moderna vaccination. That's the first round of the Moderna vaccination now. The government targeted 1,073,000 persons. And you know what? They've achieved that target 100%. Same thing for the AstraZeneca vaccine. They targeted 168,000 persons. They have achieved 100% that target. So the problem is not much of vaccine hesitancy as it is about vaccine availability. That is where the issue is. So, we have to wait until we get to that period when there will be enough vaccine to be able to tell if indeed the problem of vaccine hesitancy now in this country is really serious. But no doubt at all, it is there. But the truth is that at the moment, we don't have enough to go around, and that's where the challenge is, Richard.
All right, Deji, compelling points that you have made there. Don't go away. I've got one more question for you. But first, let's bring Farai back into the discussion. Farai, based on what you said earlier, how are Zimbabweans reacting to this directive?
Well, Richard, there are very mixed reactions here. I think those who are in favor and who've been encouraging people and pushing for vaccinations are saying that this is a good thing. It will help us to achieve herd immunity as quickly as possible. It will reduce the burden in terms of health facilities, the need for hospitalization. But I think, the arguments, the counter to that are that people have a right. The government has said this is a voluntary exercise, and those rules should not change now. Those goalposts should not be shifted. We know already that there is a court challenge by the ZCTU, as you mentioned. And I think that will be instructive in terms of showing which way the country will go in terms of this. A number of companies have already been saying that they want to protect their staff, they want to reduce the burden in terms of health, and so they're saying vaccination is mandatory. And if we want to respect the rights of those who don't want to be vaccinated, what about the rights of those who want to be vaccinated and want to minimize their risks? So it is clearly a very slippery slope, a very divided opinion, but I think what will determine the way we move forward is obviously how the courts determine that challenge by the Zimbabwe Congress of Trade Unions. I think similar to what Deji mentioned, the similar issue is being faced here in Zimbabwe, where those who are saying, look, you want to punish people for not being vaccinated, but there aren't adequate stocks of the vaccines. If someone wanted to go and get vaccinated today, they would not be immediately able to get that vaccine. And so if they get penalized or fired from their job, it's not because they don't want to be vaccinated, it's because the vaccines aren't available for everyone who wants to be vaccinated at this point in time. Richard.
All right, Farai Wakatuya, let's leave it there for now. Unfortunately, Deji, we've run out of time. We'll have to talk about this a little later, but let's dive in a little more. Let's talk some more about the vaccine hesitancy, and we are joined by Dr. Angelique Coetzee. Angelique is the chairperson at the South Africa Medical Association. Angelique, welcome to Africa Live. Now, Zimbabwe and Nigeria appear determined to take drastic measures to tackle vaccine hesitancy. What is your take on this, Doctor?
Good afternoon, and good afternoon to all your viewers out there. Drastic measurements is not going to do the trick going forward. So, it is the best thing would be to get your people on board and make sure that the message that one is carrying out there to the population is around vaccine literacy, so that you speak to the people around their age groups, because the same message for 18-year-olds would not be the same for a 60-year-old. So you need to speak around your targeted audience regarding age groups. You need to make sure that you have a very good communication policy, and that's extremely important. And then you need to create an enabling environment where the people can go to and get their vaccines. We're always saying the vaccines should come to the people, and the people should not go to the vaccines. You also need to take into consideration how difficult it is for some people to get into a taxi to go to a site that they need for them to get their vaccines. So government should rather, again, as I've said, take a more lenient approach and have incentives. Like if you go for your vaccine, Make sure that each and everyone's blood pressure is taken. Make sure that their sugar is just being taken as well. Just do something more that would be more alluring for them to go and wanting to get their vaccine. And be honest about the side effects, and get the people to trust you.
All right, Doctor, the matter is likely to spark debate about the rights of individuals. What other steps can address vaccine hesitancy, perhaps educating and understanding the science?
Yeah, it is extremely important, but that comes back again to communication, and you need, again, to give the message at the right level. So in South Africa, there was a recent direction of the Minister of Labour regarding the COVID-19 vaccines in certain workplaces, and that raised the question whether employees in such places may be compelled to be vaccinated. So if you then start looking at all the different laws, and that I can speak on behalf of South Africa, then it is, we need to take into consideration that when it is a pandemic, national health of the people comes first, and you have to make sure that you that you ensure your safety of your own people, because you cannot afford to lose people either doing not at work for sick days or dying from the COVID-19. And our hospitals are overcrowded when we get the waves, and I'm quite sure it will be the same for other countries as well. So you need to give the employers, especially if you are working with public, the ability to decide whether their employees needs to get mandatory vaccination from that company, or whether it is a governmental institution or not. But just to bring out a gross regulation saying you have to, it's going to open you up in any case for fraud. So a lot of people will get counterfeit passport vaccines, and it's going to defy the purpose. You have to get the buy-in of the people.
All right, Dr. Angela Coetzee, thank you so much for your time and perspective. Much appreciated. Now, the United States has donated more Moderna COVID-19 vaccines to Kenya. The second batch of the donated doses arrived at Nairobi's International Airport on Monday morning. Africa still lags behind in vaccinating its most vulnerable people compared to other parts of the world. CGTN's Nick Modima reports.
Kenya has received an additional 880,320 doses of the Moderna vaccine from the United States. This is the second batch of the 1.76 million doses donated to Kenya by the U.S. government through the COVAX facility.
Yes, we're doing something to make sure we're able to reach everyone, and particularly those who may be unable for one reason or the other to present themselves at the designated vaccination centers.
This donation is part of the Biden-Harris administration's commitment to help combat COVID-19 around the globe. And it is based on the strong partnership that the United States and Kenya have built over the last 60 years.
Kenya is also expected to receive another 2 million doses of Pfizer vaccines donated by the U.S. government in mid-September. More doses of the vaccine are expected in the coming weeks as the country aims to have at least 10 million people fully vaccinated by the end of the year. But as much as the campaign to vaccinate the vulnerable continues to gather pace, Africa is still lagging behind in vaccinating its population. According to the Africa Centers for Disease Control, so far in Kenya, 3,171,560 vaccines have been supplied. 2.95% of the population has been inoculated, meaning 2,792,309 vaccines were administered. Africa in general has administered 75.66% doses. First dose has been administered on 48.85% of the population. Second dose on 2.7% of the population, while 2.93% represents those who have been fully vaccinated. That pushes the number to 104.2 million as at 6th of September 2021. The World Health Organization has stated that 42 countries in Africa are still behind in inoculating the most vulnerable 10% of the population, and only 9 countries will beat the September target set out in May 2021. According to the European Centre for Disease Prevention and Control, as at September 6, 2021, European countries have so far fully vaccinated 263,083,779 people. In the US, more than half of the country's population has been inoculated. Nick Mudimba, CGTN, Nairobi, Kenya.
The news continues on Africa Live. We'll see you on the other side of the break with your business segment. Here's a look at what's ahead. Egypt's economy defies odds to grow by 7.7% in the fourth quarter of the 2020-2021 fiscal year.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
You don't find the stories of North Africa by sitting on the sidelines. You've got to get out, go there, and you'll find them. In the bazaars of Casablanca. Among the crowds in Cairo.
Who come to visit Cairo, the ancient capital of Egypt.
Along the waters of the Nile. Along the sands of the Sahara. No one else will take you where we can in North Africa. No one else will show you what it's all about. CGTN, see the difference.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back to Africa Live. Thanks for staying with us. I'm Richard Nta. We head to Egypt, where the cabinet says the economy has grown by 7.7% in the fourth quarter of the 2020-2021 fiscal year. It's a significant improvement from the contraction of 1.7% that was recorded in the same period last year. Yasser Hakim now takes a look at how the North African country managed to achieve that growth, as well as its plans going forward.
The 7.7% economic growth for March to June 2021 has exceeded government expectations of 5%. It shows a strong rebound from the 1.7% contraction recorded in the same period of 2020. Experts say this is due to successful policies implemented during the coronavirus pandemic.
It was a balanced policy praised by international institutions such as the IMF. It was based on preventing a total lockdown of the economy like some countries did in the region, and thus supporting the continuation of economic activity and production. Other steps relate to the strict anti-COVID measures and the vaccination process, allowing living conditions and the economy return to near normal levels.
Some sectors saw positive growth during the pandemic year, like telecommunications and IT. But industries that saw a sharp slowdown after the coronavirus outbreak, like tourism, aviation, construction and manufacturing, received and still receive constant financial assistance from the central bank.
The government also focuses on supporting the sectors that contribute to economic growth, like trade, retail and consumer-related sectors, and they have seen a 15% growth. This was fostered by the expansionist policy by the central bank, stimulating the market and creating a strong purchasing power within the family segment during the crisis. Going forward, the government will continue to focus on these sectors that account for 47% of national income.
Experts say the government has to deal with two major challenges that prevent faster growth rates. First is the very high annual population increase of 2.6% that consumes a significant chunk of state revenue. Secondly, there's an urgent need to speed up the vaccination process to allow the country to return to normalcy, and through that allows the full resumption of most economic activities. Yes, Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
The Tanzania Revenue Authority says it is working to expand the scope for revenue collection by improving tax infrastructure and exploring new taxpayers. These strategies aim to ensure a friendly environment for taxpayers and to make sure the collection reaches the projection of about $9.4 billion in the next financial year.
The Tanzania Revenue Authority has been running public education campaigns through the media and visiting trading areas with a message to promote proper uses of EFD machines and understanding the importance of paying taxes, and as well solving the challenges related to collecting tax. This move comes several months after President Samia Suluhu gave directives to the Revenue Authority to create a conducive environment for taxpayers that will ensure voluntary tax paying for the country's development.
What we've done as TRA, we've noted that out there are a number of taxpayers for some reasons that have not been registered. They are trading, but they have not been registered. Some of them weren't registered for various reasons. Probably they saw the process cumbersome. The others probably they were just not willing to pay. But since we've made it convenient in their own locations and also forwarded some of them to their shops and their business areas, they have no reason not to comply.
The registration of new taxpayers is expected to contribute to monthly and yearly collections that have also been growing. So far, the Tanzania Revenue Authority has been recording an increase in revenue collection, which is a result of the awareness on paying tax.
This financial year, what is the target that has been given to us by the government is about 22 trillion Tanzania shillings. And that contributes to about 60% of the budget, apart from other sources that government has to put in to be able to meet its total budget. One important thing to remember is that we're also getting a lot of support from the government to be able to achieve this. And we've seen a good trend, seeing the collections from July and August. We are very optimistic that we'll have a very good year in terms of revenue collection.
Tanzania will use the revenue to finance development, strengthen the capacity for industrial production and service delivery, as well as add value to agricultural products and ensure a competitive economy in the country.
We administer tax exemptions that are an incentive to investors in certain specific targeted areas. For instance, for those who want to invest in agriculture or agricultural processing, there are quite a number of attractive tax incentives there to make them to be able to invest. For those who also want to invest in a car assembly, there are also some very attractive tax incentives there. For those who want to invest in pharmaceuticals, there are also very attractive incentives there.
Apart from expanding the tax base, the Tanzanian government, in its 2021-2022 financial year, approved the changes in fees and tax systems. The country's goal is to promote investment in the country by ensuring tax incentives. Alexandria Majala for CGTN.
And Nigeria State Oil Company is considering an initial share sale after posting the first profit in its 44-year existence. The plan follows legislation signed recently by President Muhammadu Buhari. It enables the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation to offer shares to the public. Here's CGTN's Deji Badmus with more on that story.
The announcement over the likely listing of the NNPC shares in the future did not come as a surprise. A clause in the petroleum industry bill, which the president signed into law recently, provides for the public listing of the shares of the corporation. No timeline has yet been fixed for the IPO, but analysts are upbeat about the move and its likely impact.
Simply going public is more transparency, more openness on the part of NNPC. So overall, that aids corporate governance, and that basically would drive the, should I say, best practices in that corporation. So net positive for them to go profit. I think the PIB says it's a liability, limited liability company right now. Then they have to go public also in about a year or 6 months. So I would say good.
The NNPC had for long been widely considered as a non-transparent corporation in the way it operates, and never declared a profit in its 44 years of existence, until recently when it reported a net income of $698 million for 2020. At the Nigerian Stock Exchange, brokers are eagerly anticipating the listing of the corporation's shares. Many are optimistic it will do well and deepen the market.
It's going to be a very positive one for the market, for the capital market, for the Nigerian capital market, because it's going to bring a lot of, it's going to increase the level of transaction we'll be having going forward. It's going to attract both local and foreign investors to the markets. Because if you take your mind back to Aramco, when it was listed on Saudi exchange, we saw the kind of attraction that listing was able to bring to. They were able to generate a lot of income to the government, and also it brings a lot of traction to their market. So the same thing that if NNPC is eventually listed as anticipated by the new PIA bill, PIA, we believe is going to increase the level of activities in the capital market.
Many Nigerian investors are eagerly waiting for the listing of the NNPC shares on the Nigerian Stock Exchange, not bothered by the fact that the corporation was a loss-making venture for over 4 decades. Everyone seems to agree and believe that by going public, the NNPC will become the cash cow it was originally designed to be. Deji Badimasi, CGTN, Lagos, Nigeria.
The Bank for International Settlements will test the use of central bank digital currencies with Australia, Malaysia, Singapore, and South Africa. Project Dunbar is an experiment that could lead to a more efficient global payments platform. Angela Coppola has the details.
The South African Reserve Bank has been researching digital currencies for some time, looking at the policy and regulatory environment domestically and regionally. That digital currency could come in useful as it operates the Southern African Development Community real-time gross settlement system.
So I think exploring the potential benefits of such a shared multilateral, multi-currency CBDC in the form of Project Dunbar is quite a natural step or natural next step for the SARB on the broader CBDC journey.
Industry reaction to the central bank's testing cryptocurrencies has been welcomed.
It can significantly increase trade, drive down the cost of remittances, especially in markets like SA where we have capital controls. And I think at the end of the day, it can build a good bridge between normal EFTs, like we know today in terms of bank transfers, and crypto. I think there's still a very big educational gap between the two.
The Bank for International Settlements test is an experiment aimed at the cross-border wholesale payments market. The SA Reserve Bank has been researching the feasibility of introducing digital currencies domestically, though.
I think the objective of the retail feasibility or retail CBDC feasibility study is to consider how the issuance of a general purpose CBDC will feed into the SARB's position or policy position and mandate. So I think broadly speaking, our approach is not to preempt any further steps, but rather for the insights gained from our ongoing experimentation with and research into CBDC to guide the most appropriate next steps, indeed, if any.
The South African Reserve Bank is treating the test as an academic exercise, a proof of concept, with no plans to implement outcomes anytime soon.
It will take central banks a very long time to move from concept to pilot phase to legislation. So who knows, how big cryptocurrency itself will be by then. So it will take them a very, very long time. And they would have to force an entire country, not force, but they would have to get the buy-in from an entire country. Banks, payment merchants, processors, businesses to adopt this new system. Right? So that's not going to be an easy feat.
The fact that the central banks are getting involved in looking at digital currencies is good news, but the innovation is going to come from the ground up, from those companies involved in cryptocurrencies. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Egypt's exports to South America will now be charged lower custom rates of between 10 and 12%. The directive follows the 2017 free trade agreement between Egypt and the Mercosur countries, which include Brazil, Argentina, Uruguay, and Paraguay. CGTN's Yasser Hakim has more from Cairo.
The new cuts in customs will benefit hundreds of Egyptian products that are exported to the Mercosur countries. The agreement in force since 2017 has helped raise Egyptian exports to the South American nations.
We can say because of this agreement, Egyptian exports tripled to $396 million, which is a fine margin. We export mainly vegetables, fruits, chemical products. There are new products we are exporting like engineering industries. We also export home electric appliances and vehicle components.
Exports from the North African state are expected to exceed $500 million by the end of 2021. Although there's an increase in bilateral trade, some experts say there should be more effort to raise these figures further.
There must be conferences and meetings between Egypt and Mercosur states to know exactly what the targeted market requires and the tests they prefer in the Mercosur, so that we can provide exactly what they need in the market, and this will naturally increase our exports. The Ministry of Trade and Industry in Egypt must hold symposiums with Egyptian SMEs to educate them on the products and needs of the Mercosur states.
The agreement stipulates a gradual reduction of customs on Egyptian goods to reach zero tariffs by 2026. The potential in South America is big, despite its long distance from Egypt.
This is a population of over 400 million people, so it's a huge market that we can increase production to export to these countries. There were supposed to be business conferences and meetings between both sides, as well as cultural gatherings and closeness, but the coronavirus pandemic halted all activities. There is hope. Once the restrictions are relaxed, trade will increase.
The zero customs deal with the Mercosur is just one of the many initiatives by the government to boost Egyptian exports, an important source of foreign currency for the North African nation. Yasser Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
We're not done just yet. We've got your sports segment coming up. Don't go away. Here's a peek at the headline. We have the very latest results from